Hello, you're listening to the SOWER, a podcast of the Ciceronian Society. The Ciceronian Society is a community of Christian scholars and public intellectuals committed to the examination of three core themes: tradition, place, and things divine, and their role in a civilization built upon the principles common to the traditions of historic Christianity. To learn more about us, our events, the podcast, our journal, Pietas, to sign up for our newsletter and make your tax-deductible gift, please go to ciceroniansociety.org. That's ciceroniansociety.org. I'm Josh Bowman, Vice President of the Ciceronian Society, and before introducing our guests, please join me in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we pray, Lord, bless our conversation today, and may all we say and do bring honor and glory to you. Amen. We're recording this on the afternoon of November 21st, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Joseph Wysocki. Joe is a graduate of Baylor University and is now the Dean of the Honors College and an Associate Professor of Politics at the site of our upcoming 2023 conference, Belmont Abbey College. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Welcome. Sorry, my daughter is in the other room. I am trying to get work done at home today, and my daughter just called me from the other room. Hey, how are you?
Hey to Joe's daughter. Now, I can speak for all of the Ciceronian Society when I say we're so excited to head south this spring, in part because I'm looking out the window at a foot of snow, which before Thanksgiving. That's no fun.
Well, we are. We're so excited at the Abbey to have you guys coming down. When we made the connection last year, I just went, oh man, absolutely. This is very in line with Belmont Abbey and what we're doing in the Honors College. So absolutely thrilled.
That's great. It's great. Is your daughter excited? Is that why she wanted to come in?
She is. She's a little sick today, so she's staying home.
Oh, man. Bummer. Okay. All right. Well, before we're going to talk about Belmont, the college, and the Abbey, but the first thing I want us to do is tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, what did you study at Baylor, and how'd you end up at Belmont?
So I grew up on Long Island, New York, until I was about 15, at which point my family moved down to North Carolina, High Point, and I finished high school there. Which is how I wound up at Belmont Abbey College as an undergraduate. So I'm an alumnus of Belmont Abbey, studied political science and economics there. Wound up doing a year with something called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps after that, taught at a diocesan school in an inner city, and went to Baylor after that, studied political philosophy and American politics there. And that really was because of a teacher I had at Belmont Abbey. When I first went to Belmont Abbey as a student, I was very interested primarily in the active political life. I wanted to major in political science, go to law school, go out and do justice. And then after reading Plato's Republic at Belmont Abbey, I came to realize maybe I don't know exactly what justice is. And kind of fell in love with asking the big questions and those conversations about the theoretical questions in politics, which led me to Baylor, where I studied with David and Mary Nichols, who were a husband and wife who went down to found the PhD program there. He taught American politics, and I worked with him, wrote a dissertation on Congress, of all things, but took equal amounts of coursework with Mary, so a lot of Aristotle, a lot of Plato, and just loved it there. And back here, I founded the Honors College at Belmont Abbey about 5 years ago, which is a great books program. It's great to be home. When I see you guys talk about tradition, place, and things divine, I go, all of Belmont Abbey has been sort of access to all three of those things for me in my own life.
We're speaking your language, and there's a lot of Belmont and Baylor grads who end up at our events, and it makes sense. It's a common language, a love of the great books, love of the classics, and a love of Christ. I think there's that's an amazing combination that we bring to the table, and it's exciting to hear all those different things. So if you also, dear listener, love to read Plato, Aristotle, or even if you want to talk about Congress, I'm interested to know what did you write on?
I haven't talked about Congress since the approval of that dissertation. So.
Of course, yeah, I understand that one. It's funny. I wrote on Thoreau for my dissertation, and I said, when someone asked me why'd you pick Thoreau, I said, well, I figure after I get done writing it, I'm not going to want to spend any time with him anymore. And I could just basically write on something I was comfortable getting sick of. So maybe that's what you can use as your excuse for writing on Congress. Now, we'll talk about the honors program in a minute. I want to step back a little bit and talk about Belmont Abbey, the origins of the campus, the monastery. As I understand, it dates back to just after the Civil War, around 1876. And one of the things that we at the Ciceronian Society love to do is to get to know the places that we're in. I mean, that's a big part of why we don't always go to the big cities. Usually, we may do that in 2024. In terms of where we go, and I think Belmont is a really cool little town. And so I'd love to hear more about the college and about some of the stuff around there.
Belmont Abbey, the monastery, Belmont Abbey Monastery and College have a pretty long and interesting history. And really, the monastery and the college were integral to bringing Catholicism to North Carolina, in a major way. So the way, the beginning of our story was Father Jeremiah O'Connell, who was a diocesan priest in North and South Carolina, and at that time kind of rode the circuit like Supreme Court justices used to do back in the day, right?
Right.
He would go to all the, the local courts, the district courts. But there were so few Catholics in North and South Carolina that he rode around from parish to parish. And as he got older, he was able to purchase this plantation, the Caldwell plantation, about 700 acres at a public auction, paid $10, got the deed, and he went around just approaching a number of religious orders in the Catholic faith and told them, I'll give you this land for free if you will come and establish a school in North Carolina. So that was in Belmont, what was called Garibaldi at the time, became Belmont later. And so he approached a number of religious orders, I think the Jesuits, and it wasn't the most attractive place for Catholics to send a bunch of their talent, because there were so few Catholics. North Carolina was less than 0.5% Catholic at the time.
Wow.
And so eventually he wrote to St. Vincent's Arch Abbey, which now associated obviously with St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, to Abbot Wimmer at the time. And at first they were reluctant to send anyone down, but eventually they did. In 1876, one priest came down, Father Wolf, with two students. They started classes the day they got there in April of 1876, and then the monastery now has about 20 monks. They are Benedictine monks, I guess I should say that they're Benedictines,
Right.
And the monastery has existed ever since. We have about 20 monks on campus now. And Belmont Abbey College, first it was St. Mary's College. It was a seminary at one point for both the local diocese, and the Benedictines. It was a junior college at one point. It was single ed, 4-year, became co-ed in the 1970s when we merged with the Sisters of Mercy, had a school down the road. So now it's a co-educational 4-year college. We've just had a level change where we're offering master's degrees. And to this day, the monks serve on the board of trustees. The abbot of the monastery is always the chancellor of the college and in charge of the college's mission and identity. And, Benedictine monks are not like other orders that are what are called apostolic orders in the Catholic faith, right? Which, they have a community life, but they use that community as a sort of springboard for going out, like Franciscans going out into the cities among the poor. Whereas the Benedictines they take an interesting vow that most other orders do not take, and that is a vow of stability. So Benedictine monks, each monastery is sort of autonomous. There's a sort of loosely bound confederation of monasteries, but there's no, there's not a province of like East Coast Benedictines. It's Belmont Abbey Monastery. And the guys who, take their final vows at Belmont Abbey, stay here, usually until they die, and are buried in the cemetery at Belmont Abbey. So it's kind of a countercultural force in a world that is so heavily mobile and temporary. So I think that Benedictine charism has a lot, in common with what you guys are doing at the Ciceronian Society.
Yeah, and it's just so encouraging to hear about. I mean, think about how, just like you said, countercultural to stay in one place. I have moved so many times in my life, which is characteristic of a lot of us as academics. And it's just the idea of stability, to stay in one place, to get to know, who owns that store, that bar, or for the locals to know your name when you're out walking around. I mean that was. I mean, I'm not that old, but I mean, I feel like that was so long ago. And I mean, just growing up in the 90s, I can remember that life, that stability that so many of my parents and my friends' parents, they had grown up in the same town. That just doesn't happen anymore. It just doesn't. And we move around so much, and these men are extraordinary at Belmont Abbey, and we're looking forward to meeting several of them when we get there. Now, one of the things you do is you founded the Honors College, and I followed you on LinkedIn. And you are busy. You do so many things that I just want to, I'm going to re-enroll so that I can be in Joe's program. It looks like so much fun. Tell us a little bit about what you do at the Honors College.
Sure, yeah. I mean, to sum it up, and oversimplify, I think what we've created in the Honors College is the best combination out there of a 4-year coherent great books curriculum with the ability to choose a traditional college major. I think probably a lot of your listeners would be familiar with a lot of the 4-year great books programs out there. My wife went to one, Thomas Aquinas College out in California, St. John's in Annapolis, Wyoming Catholic College, these places where students get the benefit of a coherently ordered great books curriculum that examines, a number of the big fundamental human questions. And we wanted to offer something like that at the Honors College, but we wanted to see, is there a way we could allow students who wanted to do that to participate in our own unique 4-year great books curriculum to do that, but then maybe to offer flexibility so that while they're in a cohort with a community of students engaging in those Socratic seminars on everything from Plato to St. Augustine to Shakespeare to the American founders, they could also major in accounting if they feel called to in business or theology or biology. We just graduated our first class, and I think it's turned out really well. I mean, we've had these students, for example, in our class that just graduated that were biology majors, applied to medical school, got into medical school, but they also studied Montesquieu and Aristotle. And I just think, it winds up being great for two reasons. One, we get to send people out into the world who have read these foundational texts that are going to help them to lead, to understand happiness, how they can contribute to the happiness of their families and their colleagues. But also it makes for really great conversations in the classroom when you have students who are majoring in economics and they think about economic questions, and the scientists who think about the scientific questions, and they all bring that to Augustine's Confessions, right? I mean, it just leads to this really lively, fertile conversation. So that's kind of the heart of the curriculum. We do a number of things in terms of the community, but that's more of a recruitment pitch to current students.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, what we're trying to do is create a culture of students who are interested in the foundational questions, and it's a blessing to be part of it. It really is. And our main progression is ancients, Christians, moderns. We go ancients, Christians, moderns in terms of the great books, and then back to Christians, so we can show that Christianity has an answer to modernity. It can engage with it. And then we have a cool senior year called the Crises in the West, which is some really interesting topical courses on things like love and friendship, history and the idea of progress, science and technology, where we read some 20th and 21st century thinkers, everyone from Alistair MacIntyre to Pope Benedict XVI to Flannery O'Connor in that senior year, trying to understand our own time and place in light of the great conversation. So, some of the stuff you see on LinkedIn that we were talking about before, we try to host a lot of really great events on campus that are sort of supplemental to that. We had First Things on campus earlier this semester. They did a conference on friendship in times of polarization, which wound up being great. We had 100 people from off campus coming to talk about this tough thing that so many of us experience, which is family and friendships sort of experiencing tension and problems during times of political strife in the United States. The American Conservative came and did a conference on life in America after Roe at the beginning of the semester. That was wonderful. Things are coming along here, and we have just wonderful students. We have wonderful students.
The First Things conference is certainly prescient as we go into the Thanksgiving season here in just a couple of days. Luckily, in my family, usually just we're Italian, so everything is loud and it sounds like we're arguing, but we're just talking. So there's that's a lot of fun. But yeah, Thanksgiving is awkward for plenty of people. And I'm also thinking about this honors program and how this is a great 4 maybe 5 years that these students get to spend in a program like this, and it's the kind of thing that for most of us, this is the only time in our lives we really get to do this. And while some of us have the benefit of going on to teaching in higher ed and being able to have these conversations on a regular basis, most people don't. But at the same time, I think they would. They don't necessarily want to pay for it, but they would love to have the opportunity to have these meaningful kind of high-end conversations that they either had in college or they missed out on. And I think the Ciceronian Society, our long-term goal is so that the kind of people that graduate from an honors college like this, that they find a community and especially a church that continues the conversations they started when they knew Dr. Wysocki, right? And to me, that would be success, where someone says, I had a great experience at Belmont Abbey, but then I found this church that had a group that was influenced by the Ciceronian Society, and they kept this conversation going. To me, that would just be amazing. And I found that out personally. I taught a class called The Critics of Christianity years ago, where we read Freud, Nietzsche, some of the new atheists, and some of the historical critics of Christianity, like Bart Ehrman, Elaine Pagels, people like that. And it was so much fun because we had people, just like you said, from all these different backgrounds that were in the room. Some people that worked in a factory, some people that worked in finance, some people that were teachers. It was it's a great experience that we don't get to have enough outside of college, right? And I would love to see that happen more.
It's funny, I find people are so grateful for the ability to do that. We did just a follow-up session to our First Things conference, like a Zoom session if you couldn't make it. And, it was like 12 people on this call, and they couldn't do all the readings, and it was just 1 hour, and we talked about politics and Aristotle's rhetoric. And I think you're right. There's just such a hunger for it among people who are out there, especially in the professional world, who are raising children. These people were so grateful, and it was no amazing session that I led. It was just, hey, let's talk about some things, and I let people talk and ask questions. And at the end, I just got these letters like, "Thank you so much." And I went, okay. I didn't really do, it didn't have to be really, it didn't have to be incredibly polished. It was like they wanted to talk about, how do you navigate the political and the family and the personal, and it was just. Anyway, I was just so surprised at how grateful people were.
I wonder if part of that is this need for something that's not superficial. You think of so much of our life, just it feels superficial, or the kind of what you're bombarded with, whether it's in the media, in movies, and in more recent fiction, even. It turns us off because we know there's more, but no one wants to give it to us. And I think there is a hunger for something more substantive. You're talking about that stability that the Benedictines have, and I think I think intellectually, spiritually, we long for that as well. It's something that the church can provide, and it is certainly a blessing. One of the things I want to finish talking about here is Belmont itself. So we got many of our listeners here are excited about coming down to the town. So we've heard about the college and the area. We know it's a suburb of Charlotte to a point. Just tell us a little bit about Belmont, North Carolina, Gaston County, and what we can expect when we visit there.
So Belmont, yeah, it is about 15 minutes from the airport and from uptown. Belmont it's just a charming little town that you can walk to from the college. Great restaurants, breweries, beautiful park uptown. We have the Sisters of Mercy right on the way into Belmont, who have done all kinds of amazing ministries in the area for the poor and disaffected. Trying to think. So I love Gaston County because I like access to the city. Mecklenburg is where Charlotte is. Gaston is the next county over, where we have Belmont, Gastonia, where my family and I live.
Okay.
And so there's downtown Gastonia, downtown Belmont, and downtown Charlotte, and I think they all have a bit of a different feel. Charlotte's big city, and the things you can do there are everything from going to a Charlotte Hornets game to lots of music venues.
The NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Come on now. You have the Billy Graham Museum.
Yeah, the Billy Graham thing. Yep.
That's right, which is actually very cool. The Billy Graham Museum. It's worth
How far away is that?
From the college, maybe 20 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay. I've always wanted to visit there.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I grew up in an evangelical home, and I think about. I remember thinking when someone pointed out to me, we Catholics have the Pope. You have Billy Graham, and I was like, oh, okay.
That's right.
That's not exactly how it works, but I understood the metaphor. So,
well
listen,
kind
Joe.
Of similar interesting stories when you get there. I mean, there's a time where he goes behind the Iron Curtain to preach, and it reminded me, of course, of John Paul II and others.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's a ton to do in the city of Charlotte. Symphony, all the things that a major city has. Belmont is, I would say, small town yuppie. So it's kind of hipster yuppie. Beautiful place to walk. Lots of nice mom and pops restaurants. Gets pretty active when the weather warms up. Lots of sort of monthly festivals with live music outside. So great dining scene in Belmont. And then Gastonia is kind of in between. Gastonia is a mix of, less Charlotte yuppie, more mix of, I don't know. You have a downtown
hillbilly. Right.
Parts of it, but it's uptown is kind of in a renewal phase right now. So, but I love it. I love uptown Gastonia. A number of great places, coffee houses and things like that. I'm trying to think of the main attractions. I have 6 kids with a 7th on the way, so I don't do much anymore. So I'm trying to think.
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
If I were younger, what would I do?
Yeah, no, you don't need to go through and give the tour guide. There's so much. There is a lot to do there, and it's actually I already provided a bunch of things on the website. I particularly looked at the Muddy River Distillery. It looks really cool.
Well, one thing I would say is, I am an avid fly fisherman, so.
Oh, okay, all right.
If people are coming from areas where you cannot fly fish, there is a park about an hour away. If they wind up here with rental cars, called South Mountain State Park, that I really do love, and. If you like to fish for trout. And then of course, if you're willing to drive an hour and a half, I mean, North Carolina, the Appalachians are just some amazing trout waters there.
Especially that time of year, I would imagine, as long as it's not flooded.
Spring, you're starting to get the river stocked again in early March. So, people who like place and tradition, one thing that is quite fun is about half an hour, 40 minutes from Belmont Abbey. is the Kings Mountain National Military Memorial and Park. So if you know, I don't know if you know about Kings Mountain, but it was a battle in the Revolutionary War, a major turning point that kind of shuts down the southern strategy of the British. Fought almost entirely between what would you say?
Nathaniel Hale,
militia on both sides, American militia.
Okay.
So it's really there's one British officer, and then the rest are American loyalist and American patriot militia. But there's this really key battle, and they have the military park there with a great museum that's worth visiting. So that's a lot of fun. You can do the hike. It's only about 2 miles to do the whole hike around the mountain where the battle was fought.
That'd be really interesting. I other than Boston, I have never, and Philadelphia, I really haven't been to many Revolutionary War sites. I've never been to one in the South, which is unfortunate, but that's definitely worth checking out. Well, listen, I'm gonna let you go. You're a busy man, and you got a lot going on there, and we're getting ready for Thanksgiving, and so thank you so much, Joe. This is great, and we cannot wait
looking forward to seeing everyone and seeing you, and yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Anybody who is interested in the area, has questions, can feel free to email me. It's basically Joseph Wysocki at BAC, Belmont Abbey College, BAC.edu. I'd be happy to answer any questions. So.
That's great, and they have, they've already been a great host, and Belmont Abbey has really helped us out so much, and this is going to be a lot of fun. It's a no-brainer in terms of where we end up this coming year, and so I'm really looking forward to it. All right, well, you've been listening to the SOWER, a production of the Ciceronian Society, and if you've enjoyed this conversation and would like visiting the places that we've talked about, we invite you to join us for our next conference, which is March 9th through 11th, 2023, at Belmont Abbey College in North Carolina. Registration and details about the event are now available on our website, so be sure to rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends, and check out our website at ciceroniansociety.org. Thanks again.